Good morning, God's morning to you. Welcome to this week's broadcast of Apostle of the Future. I'm sorry, I'm looking for a pen. I just had one. Okay, welcome to Apostle of the Future. As you can see, today's title is Are You Ready for Mentorship? Now, that's a twofold question. But before we jump into that, share with your friends. Tell me where you are tuning in from. What city are you in? Are you new to Apostle of the Future? Share this with the peoples. I know sometimes it takes a minute for these whole notifications now to go off. But last week we started on apostleship and apostolic mentorship. And this week, we're going to continue in that line of thought as far as the mentorship dilemma. What is the dilemma? Dilemma is when you're having to choose between maybe two different options and neither one of them particularly favorable is typically a dilemma. But in general, many people are caught in the conflict of should I be mentored? Should I not be mentored? Or should I be a mentor? Am I ready to become a mentor or not become a mentor? And so, good morning, everybody from coast to coast. Thanks for tuning in. God is going to speak today. We're going to see what He wants to say on the subject of mentorship. Dr. Price recently addressed this in one of her broadcasts about how sometimes you just want to be close to leaders, whether it's church leaders, your job, if it's outside of ministry. Sometimes it's senior people in your family, the grandparents, great grandparents, what have you. But are you really ready for mentorship and not just companionship or spontaneous edification? But what does it take to be a good mentor and mentee? See, a lot of people, it's easy to point the finger at the leader because that's what happens a lot. They're that they become the heavy, they become the fall guy. Well, the leader failed at this and the leader failed at that, and they didn't do this and they didn't do that. But truly, you need to examine the mentee as well to see just how well both sides of this actually did what they were supposed to do. Did they, in fact, do what they were supposed to do? That's why assessing and evaluating is really essential. Scripture talks about asking questions. One man sounds right. Oh, and then the other one comes along, and you're like, oh, I really didn't think about that. So if you have any questions about mentorship, either being a mentor, becoming a mentor, if you have any questions about maybe my journey along the way, going from only being a mentee to now being still a mentee and a mentor to others, then you can go ahead and post your questions online and I'll answer them if, they're appropriate questions. You have to say that these days. And so when it comes to are you ready for mentorship? Let's just talk about on the receiving end of things. Are you ready to become a mentee? Questions that you have to ask yourself about the mentor mentee process. From the mentee side, what does it take? Good morning, Darlene. What does it take to be an effective and affective mentee? One, you have to be teachable. Teachable, teachable, teachable. Last week, I made a statement that just because you're well read doesn't mean you're ready. I have all these books behind me. Those books assisted in my readiness in what God is doing, but they did not make me ready for the job. They supplemented, they equipped, they added to, but they didn't replace that one-on-one mentorship with my mentor, Dr. Paula Price. And so, as a mentee, the first thing you have to be is teachable. What does it mean to be teachable? I mean, hey, I like to learn. Liking to learn does not equal necessarily being teachable because there are people who like to learn on their terms. When somebody says they're teachable, what that means is that they have the ability to yield their will, to listen to wisdom, to weigh it, to accept that whatever source it's coming from is trustworthy, and then to assimilate, augment their behavior, not just short term. Here's where a lot of people fall short. Are you listening? I hope you're listening. Are you leaning in? I hope you're leaning in. A lot of people think that being shaped and molded is simply behavior modification. And that's not the case. Now, there are things that will need to be modified. But if your change is solely based on being constantly corrected, like you'll change when you're corrected, but then you'll notice several weeks or months later, you're back to your old ways. That means you really didn't learn from that situation, or you didn't agree with how it went down, or you didn't agree with what your mentor said. You just did something to appease them that it seems like you disagreed with. And as soon as time went by, you slowly or gradually went back into your habits or routines. This is when you know if somebody is just reactionary to your teaching and training, or if they are, in fact, teachable and moldable. I have a tickle in my throat. Sorry, guys. If you're teachable and moldable, if you're shapeable, you have to be shapeable. Scripture talks about the potter's wheel, talks about being fit for the master's use. It really quite a bit addresses the process of being readied to be used by God in any kind of great capacity, for sure, is long. Typically, it's grueling. There's a lot of embarrassment in it. But I have found out that the embarrassment largely is based on how you react or respond to the training or development. For example, people who handle it very well almost never have public issues. People who tend to fight and resist, this is when you start having issues, many of them in public. So, what it can look like is that the person who has no issues publicly seen never gets disciplined because nobody sees it. Well, you're never corrected. Well, you're because nobody sees that happening. But what is often the case, especially if you're under a righteous leader, that correction is happening in the back room. That person is working on themselves in the back room at home before they go to bed during the day. In the morning, they're getting up early. They're spending that time in their studies with the Lord, thinking, pondering, planning, whatever. And so it looks like there's favoritism happening sometimes because you always come down on this person, you never come down on that person. But it could be that one person is a little hard-headed and stiff-necked, just a little maybe, while the other person is teachable, shapeable, moldable, and malleable. And we easily throw things out there. You're just playing favorites. You're just doing this. You're just doing that. And not really attributing an actual process to the journey. I hope this is helping you this morning because as we're moving forward in our training and our development on Apostle of the Future, you have got to be shapeable and moldable to become who God needs you to become. Whether it's ministerial, whether it's outside of ministry. Listen, if you hear random noises around here, there's just a lot going on. There's a renovation project going on up the hallway. Other things are happening in the building. So I just apologize now if there's any random noise in the background. All right. So we're back in Eternity's Generals by Dr. Paula Price, page 301. If the most valuable available person has not been purged, groomed, and pruned by the Lord for the assignment, the results can be ruinous as a critical spirit mercilessly uncovers the elder minister, spreading private matters abroad. The converse of the situation is when the elder seeks to offload quickly personal matters and implies to a willing candidate that more will come out of the relationship than actually will. So here's what happens. And last week we started talking about mentorship. This week we're continuing in that thought. When things go sideways in these mentorship relationships, it can get very ugly very fast. This is why the question is, are you ready for mentorship? And are you ready to be mentored by the type of person who is mentoring you? For example, if you have an issue with heavy-handed authority, not saying abuse, but heavy-handed authority, then you do not want to be under a heavy-handed leader or mentor. That is going to cause you to crumble, probably react, lash out, have flashbacks, take you back to a place that you really thought you were delivered from. If you are somebody who doesn't like and can't handle being under men, the mentorship of men, or under women, the mentorship of women, you have got to, again, last week we talked about wanting to become a version of the person who is mentoring you. So if there are intrinsic things about this person that you can't stand and won't yield yourself to, then you're not ready for the mentorship process. Is that to say that God won't put you under somebody you don't like? Nope. Be sure. You know what? Sometimes he certainly does put you under, because he's like, we need to break this thing in you. We need to come after this issue in you. We need to get this out of your soul. We need to get this out of your spirit. And he will intentionally put you with somebody who racks your nerves, rubs you the wrong way. Every time you turn around, they're in your face, even if they're just standing there saying hello, because you're trying to escape. That's different from something or someone who you fundamentally dislike, disagree with, can't stand, don't like the sound of their voice. There are some people, especially in my earlier days, who tried to seduce me away from Dr. Price's ministry, who tried to prophesy me out and do all these things. And I tell you what, their voice fell on dead ears. I was like, what? Because they weren't my mentor. There was nothing in my DNA that was compatible with theirs. And it was just a rivalry and a competition thing against my mentor. But I was aware enough, even very early in the game, to know that and recognize that. Okay, Miss Darlene says, can an individual have more than one mentor in their life at the same time? Yes, you can have more than one mentor in your life if they're not conflicting. And what I mean is, I know some people who, for example, have a mentor in business because they're starting up a business. And then they have a mentor for a completely different aspect of their life. That can be okay, as long as they're not rivaling wisdom, rivaling counsel. Ultimately, one will probably take precedence over the other. You can't serve two masters. I know in that the context of scripture, it's talking about mammon and money and people and everything, but ultimately one takes the front seat and one takes the back or the side. So you need to determine which one is your primary mentor and possibly which one is your secondary mentor or influencer or coach or trainer. If you examine both relationships, you'll probably find out both of those people are not, in fact, mentors. One might be a mentor, one might be a coach. You might examine it and find out actually neither of them are mentoring you. There are people who might be covering you that are not mentoring you. There might be people that you are serving under in your job or your career. And in fact, they're not mentoring you, but maybe they're training you, giving you spontaneous wisdom, intermittent sessions, and things like that. So do a tighter examination of those relationships, Darlene, and you might find out both of those people, in fact, are not mentors in your life, or they are mentoring in your life, but just in two different aspects, in two different places. But I will say again that the main thing to know and to look at is to make sure that what they are saying is not rivaling and clashing and canceling out the other. So if one person is, for example, telling you, um, taking care of home and family is the most important thing, you got to make sure that's taken care of first before everything else. Then you have somebody else telling you the job is the most important thing. You have to do the job, because if you don't have a job, you won't have a place to take care of your family. Somebody else is telling you if you don't make the job number one, then you won't have a family to care about, and you don't take care of your family, then who cares about the job? And so you want to make sure that those types, that's just an example, but those types of things are not clashing with one another, because you might have to shift one aspect of the relationship with one person over the other. That is a good question. Yes, Chosen for Your Heart said that is a good question. Yes. Hey, Amaya. Good morning. Are you in school? Should you be in school? Should you be online right now? Okay. Any more questions from anybody out there about mentorship and development? Because it's really important that you are ready. So what happens is, whenever you are under the wrong mentor, it's like somebody stabbing in the dark trying to find you, trying to find where you are. You'll know if you're under the right mentor because God has downloaded to them your not just your life and prophesying a future, but also telling you about your past. They understand where you're broken. They understand where other people might come down on you with both feet. They might say, wait a minute, hold on. This is a whole other thing that God is working out. Hello, Brian, as well. They're in school. Shouldn't you guys be listening in class? All right. Then, so being under a mentor is important, the right person, because God has downloaded to them your life, downloaded to them your past, your brokenness, what's going to heal you, what's going to restore you, the wisdom. Your mentor is going to have patience with you, yet not indulge. That's a nice fine line between being patient and not indulging in somebody's whatever issues they have going on, knowing when to push, knowing when to step back, knowing when to nudge, knowing when to pause. All of that is very important in having the right mentor. So she's talking about here, when things do go off, then that person, and we've seen this, if they leave their mentor, they can run their mouth and tell their business. We have people sign confidentiality agreements in our organization. We have a legal ground to go after anybody who is telling the private business of the leader or the company business, just like any other organization. Once you get into the upper leadership, you sign non-compete clauses, non-disclosure clauses, and you sign those to protect the organization. You sign them to protect you. You just can't go out running and telling everybody's business. Not here, without the potential to have some ramifications in that particular area, because being somebody's mentee is a very vulnerable position for the mentor, not just the mentee, because many times we think, oh, it's just the lower person, if you will, in this hierarchy who is vulnerable, but the leader above them is also vulnerable, because that person can have one bad day, put their life on blast on social media, and it's over. That's why you have to know that the person who is serving you, even if you all clash, because at some point you will, it's just a part of life. If you clash, that one person isn't putting your business out there. Likewise, if you are a mentee, you have to make sure that your mentor isn't putting your business out there. We've seen this, for example. I know somebody who at one point was going through marital issues, and so they went to the leader over the ministry and they confided in him as they're covering. And the next thing they know, they're pulled into a meeting with the husband, who didn't go really to the church like that, with the husband and the other leader to have a meeting about what she said in confidence. It was a mess. It was nasty. And it was a huge betrayal of trust. And so the trust has got to be there. His attitude was, well, he's the man and you need to work it out, basically, and be a good wife. And the issues that were on the table were very serious. This is not somebody who was like, I just really wish he wouldn't leave his shoes by the front door when he got home from work. There were some serious things going on there, and that confidence was betrayed. And ultimately it went the way it went, but so it's the mentor has to be trusted with the information from the mentee, and the mentee has to be trustable with that mentor's private information. Knowing them when nobody else is around, seeing them at home, seeing them relaxed, seeing them not in their professional minister's posture. And because not everybody can handle the human side, the humanity of a minister. You have too many people who will have a level of an expectation of perfection of their ministers in Christ. Well, how can you do this in your minister? And how can you do that? And I'm not talking about the standards of righteousness or anything like that, but just in general. Oh, so I see you leave your cup on the counter. Oh, well, I see. I mean, come on already. And there are some people who are just that petty, which is why everybody who comes into close proximity of you, whether you are a mentee or a mentor, needs to be vetted. And vetting can look a myriad of ways over time and in different organizations. Okay. So there is a dutiful servant diligently attends to the elder minister with the hopes that he or she will be rewarded with promising ministry opportunities later. So are you ready for mentorship? If you are looking to be mentored as a means to ministry promotion, you are not ready for mentorship. You're not in the position for mentorship, even though that might be a part of training and development. But if you're seeking out what leader can mentor me, what leader can develop me so that I can jump rank, so that I can become an apostle, so I can become a prophet. No, that's not the accurate motivation for being a mentee. If you are scoping as a mentor because you need somebody to fill a leadership position, you have got to make sure that the person you're mentoring or pursuing to mentor has demonstrated the qualities that the position is looking for, and that their soul is ready for the responsibility of the position. Many times we've seen leaders who are very selfish and they seek out people who they know they are compatible with, they know that they're symbiotic with, they know that they can get a lot out of that person, but that person is not ready for that level of responsibility. I've seen leaders run their people ragged. One time, we had somebody taking care of us on a trip years ago. This lady had about 5 kids, and they had her running all over the place like she didn't have a family or a drive. And her family situation was very precarious as well. Somebody else who's in a very interesting family situation. And those leaders did not care. So you have got to know that if you're pursuing mentorship, it is not because you want to be in a certain ministry position later. You should not be pursuing a particular leader or mentor in your company, in your organization, in your business, in your career, not just church, in your career as a means to an end of elevation. That is going to get you into a lot of trouble. Because what's going to happen is this: they are going to groom you. If they're righteous, they're going to groom you for the position. And it will not be pleasant and it will not be easy, because it's not supposed to be easy, because this is a hard job. Leadership anywhere is a hard job. Any leader anywhere, it has a hard job. It does not matter the career. Ministry is not any easier than any other career. A lot of people who come out of secular arena come into the church arena and they want to tell everybody what to do. Oh, I know how to straighten this place out. I know how to do this and I know how to do that. And you need to do this and you need to do that. And we've dealt with it over the years. But when you come into this, it's a whole other animal. Just like every career has its pitfalls, its setbacks, it has its elevation, it has its promotions, all of it. And ministry is the same. And so when you're thinking about, man, I think I need a mentor to go to the next level, you have got to evaluate if that is in case the truth, or if you're trying to bypass and circumvent the system by using a mentor to get you somewhere faster. Here is a question from Chosen Pure Hearts on YouTube. What does the clashing of mentor and mentee process look like from a healthy perspective? Healthy perspective is you have a particular habit, let's just say, that is not conducive to future leadership. For example, this is something that we've all had to work through in our up and coming years here. Not changing instructions. So let's just say your mentor is giving the mentor is giving the mentee specific instructions. I want this done a certain way by a certain time, X, Y, Z, and the other. That mentee is slightly changing and altering the instructions. Well, this wasn't available, so we did this, and that wasn't available, so I did that, and this happened, and then, well, my life and my schedule, and before you know it, you have actually changed what the instructions were, although you had very good reasons. And so mentor-mentee clash could be over something like that. So that's a healthy perspective, because you're not following instructions, but it's a part of grooming and mentorship. Because when you're a leader, for example, if we look in the book of Joshua, the Lord's instructions to Joshua was to follow the instructions as they were given to Moses on the mountain. As I told Moses, as he did, so you do. Now, if you have an inherent habit of changing instructions and not being obedient, that's going to be hard for you, because God's covenant with Joshua was this: if you do it the way I gave Moses to do it, you're going to be fine. Didn't mean he didn't have to battle, because he did. Man, did that man war. He warred. That is all Joshua did, was war, 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 and war against God's enemies. So if you are not ready to carry the torch of your mentor in whatever God has given them to do, professional, sacred, secular, whatever, then you're not going to be a good mentee. If you're trying to avoid their hardship, you're not going to be a good mentee. If you're trying to change because see, if you judge, hey, Apostle Nathaniel, if you unrighteously judge your mentor by saying it's their fault that the people blah, 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 and you ultimately shift the way they do things because you think your way is better, you're not a good mentee. I have said to Dr. Price in this ministry for years, over the years, when we've had, and every church has them, okay, just like every company has them, disgruntled, off, uneven, imbalanced people, they're crazy. They need to go. They need to shift. They need to be delivered. They need to do whatever they need to do. No, your issue is not you, Dr. Price. I'm telling you, it's them, because these people have a mess everywhere in their life. When I'm judging if the mentor is correct or the other people are correct, I'm looking at the fruit. What's the fruit of the mentor versus the fruit of the people who's running their mouth? Because the fruit of somebody running their mouth is if you can't hold down a job, if you can't stay in an apartment, if you can't keep friends and relationships, if you can't do whatever, if you haven't built anything from the ground up, I probably don't want to hear from you about what it takes to build something from the ground up. If you have not helped sustain something in hard, terrible times, I probably don't want to hear from you about your opinion of how somebody else is doing it. You know, walking a mile in their shoes kind of thing can carry a lot of weight. So with that mentor-mentee relationship, and that's such a good question, you'll have those questions, especially in the beginning, because the mentor is going after your weaknesses. Your mentor is going after your points of vulnerability. Why? Because you have to be strong, but what God is putting into your hands, you have to keep and maintain. That mentor is going after, see, but that particular habit, 5 years from now, when you're in charge of this, is going to cause this whole division to fall. Is going to cause this whole department to fall. It's going to cause this whole company to slowly implode on itself. Sometimes one bad habit, and it's rarely just one because so many things are tied to each and every habit that we do. All right. But one obvious habit, how about that? One obvious habit can really have a domino cascading effect of failure, destruction, what have you. I've been the worship leader of First Fruits of Praise for almost 22 years. This year marks 22 years. I can't even believe it. 22 years. And it's been a journey. 22 years. A lot of people coming and going in 22 years. You think about a company, how many people hire, fire, quit, retire in 22 years. So we have people coming and going. They moved here for school. School was out. They were gone. They were only supposed to be a part-time. They went on to do another career. Some people, we had a few falling outs over the years, whatever. 22 years coming and going. What has maintained the First Fruits of Praise standard? We have a handbook. I use that handbook. Listen, if it's in writing, we are going to do it. We're just incorporating our choir in this new dispensation of our ministry. And Prophet Tamira had me the first couple rehearsals go through elements of our service manual, our handbook, so everybody knows our history, the expectations of the members of the team, the expectations of the leaders of the team, and so on and so forth. So are you ready for mentorship? If you are seeking mentorship from somebody who cannot tell you their expectations of you, that mentor might not be ready for you, or it may end up getting very dicey along the way. Dr. Paula Ann Price is very clear about her expectations. They are in writing. And I love that because any position description you can go back to as a point of reference. You can also go back to as a safety protocol. You can go back to as an assessing tool. Am I doing my job? This is how we assess people. You're not doing your job because these things are on your position description and you haven't done them. When people come and I want to do this for the company and they'll come to us and I want to do that, then this is the position description. Are you able? Are you available to do those certain things? Okay, so all these different various dynamics to the mentor. And if you have any questions, if you're just getting on, if you have any questions about the mentor mentee relationship, you can post them online and I'll read them and give you an answer. Because this is really important. I think the mentor mentee relationship is probably one of the messed over relationships in the body of Christ. But right now, things are really messy, period, in the world, especially when it comes to that dynamic. Okay, so you want to make sure that you are not having somebody work with you. Now, if you're the mentor, you have to really interrogate people's motives for why they want to be mentored by you. There are tests, there are things, and we all do them. There are things that I do. People tell me, Apostle Ashley, I want you to mentor me. I want you to develop me. I want you to do this. I'm like, well, sign up for advisements. We're going to start right there. Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Because this is a training development process. Are you going to put your time where your money is? Are you, what kind of skin in the game do you have? There are some people who talk and talk and talk because they want to get around the system. They want to jump ranks. They want to pull experience that they had somewhere else into this arena, which may or may not apply. Well, I've been a leader this many places. Has it been this field? Has it your education? It's like when you enroll in a school, you can have all these credits somewhere else, but will that school, the new school, accept your credits? Or will they just roll over into electives? See, the same thing is true in relationship of this type of caliber and this dimension. So there's so many people, I just really want you to mentor me. You probably don't. You want things like this where I'm just talking and you can just glean some wisdom and maybe some advice, maybe some light coaching, some intermittent impartation, but not necessarily mentorship, because mentorship it's a relationship of another caliber, because whenever you are mentoring, you are grooming somebody to become something greater than what they are. It's very hands-on. It's very actually invasive. Mentorship can be invasive. It invades your ego. It invades your ideology. It invades your time. If you are under if you're being raised up to be a high leader, then you should be under a mentor who is going to just make your life so uncomfortable, because this position is uncomfortable many times, especially when you're breaking into it and it's breaking into you. You have to be able to withstand seasons of warfare, seasons of opposition, and still stand up and do your job, and still get up and pray, and still get up and worship, and still get up and groom those and greet the people and do all those things like nothing is wrong. People should be shocked to find out that something is happening in the backdrop of your life, because that's real mentorship, is sucking it up. I mean, on our jobs, on secular jobs, if you have too many personal problems, they will say, I don't think we're a fit for you. We need to give you some time off to take care of your personal space. But in ministry, a lot of times we want to bring it all into the picture. Okay, so this is again being mindful of those who want to be rewarded with promising ministry opportunities later. You need to be mindful of a mentor who wants to have you come on board for this just to have a position later. Now, it's one thing if they say, I've been observing you, I've been studying you, that you've had multiple conversations, and they're recognizing that you are successor material. I want to raise you up. I want to groom you to take the reins at this time. That's wonderful. I would say get things in writing. If you don't really know, first of all, if you don't really know somebody, you want to get to know them before committing to such a responsibility. She says here, such an arrangement can go on for years until the servant wakes up and realizes the implied promise is never going to happen. Man, I can't even tell you how many times I have seen that. People have served leaders for years in the body of Christ. And we've seen this in companies. Well, if you work overtime, then I'll see to it that your name is thrown in the ring for promotion. If you come in early, if you work on this project, if you do these things, I've seen this happen to a lot of women for sure, men for sure, but definitely women. And the promotion never comes. Feeling hurt and betrayed, the naive attendant severs ties, seriously wounded. Such an event can turn vengeful and bitterly retaliate against the unsuspecting minister. So if you are a minister and you are working to get mentees, the last thing you want to do is give false hope. Dr. Price has been the most honest leader from Jump Street. She told me in the first meeting, I am not able to do this. I am able to do this. I can't do this right now. When I can, I will. This is what I can do. I'm not making false promises. I was like, you know what? I can follow somebody who's honest about what they can't do, not just what I want to hear that they can do. And she'll say, stick with me. You stick with me, I'll take you to the top with me. I won't leave you to the side of the road. And all along the way, that has been true. As a leader, you need to make sure that you are not baiting the hook of enticement with people because you want them to say yes to you when you can't fulfill what you're saying. I don't care what it is, it doesn't matter how small it seems. Do not overpromise and underdeliver. You know, in business, what do they say? It's better to underpromise and overdeliver. It's better to play it safe than sorry. It's better to tell the truth. You know, we're in the industry of the Lord Jesus Christ. Tell the truth and don't lie. Don't embellish. Can you? Well, I just need to have a salary. If you're able to pay people, tell them. If not, be honest. Actually, at this time, we're just not able to do that. But we can do this. I can pay for your gas. We can pay for your groceries. We can do whatever. And if you can't do any of that, just say, hey, I can't do anything but pray, raise you up, give you wisdom, counsel, and instruction. And when I can, I will, or if I can, I will. Be honest with the people who are serving you because they're people too. And what you do to them will carry over into the rest of their life. Likewise, as a mentee, what you do to your mentor will carry with them the rest of their life. There are reasons that people are bitter. There are reasons that they're hurt. You have leaders who have done some of the most craziest, heinous things to their people, and vice versa. I've seen some of these saints over the years do things to their leaders. I'm like, what did you do? What did you say? What business did you put out there in the street? And then their life goes to in the toilet, not knowing why, because of what they set in motion against God's leaders. She says again, the outcome is tragic as a once or potentially wonderful attendant is jaded and embittered at having been abused. It's called the Ahab Jacob syndrome. We all know this story. Oh, sorry, Ahab Jacob syndrome. Ahab promised Jacob something for his services for a specific period of time with no intention of honoring his word. Although they may not be the case. Ahab Jacob. Is that right? Because what was his father's name? Or father-in-law? It was wasn't his father-in-law? Uh cynical, so it ends up in a cynical result, which is a prudent reason to explore prospective mentorships carefully. Take your time. Laban, wasn't it Laban who did that? Take your time when you are seeking out the mentorship relationship. Mentor mentee relationship. Take your time because it's supposed to be a slow growing relationship anyway. And so if the two of you plan on being around each other for a while, there really should be no rush. Yeah, Laban. There really should be no rush. What all these examples share is wisdom for determining the success of failure of a mentorship. To avoid difficulties, everyone involved should be clear about the aims of the mentorship they want to form. Here are a few things to consider when deciding the outcomes of your mentorship. So again, we're in Eternity's Generals, pages 302. Okay, good morning, miss you. Now, who are you? See, you have these YouTube names. I'm like, who are you? Okay, a promising and fruitful mentorship should offer one, a unique wisdom and practicality for what you are called to do. Your mentor, and now we're talking about if you're the mentee, your mentor should have a unique wisdom and a practicality for executing your job. If you are the mentor, you should have that wisdom to pour into a mentee. Two, protection from failure, faults, the unscrupulous, and naivete. Three, specific preparation for God's eventual use or promotion. Four, installation of knowledge, astuteness, vocational insight, and protocols. Five, perspective shaping that alters previous views and unrealistic expectations to the realities of the call. We're going to camp out there at number 5 for just a minute. Let me say that again. Perspective shaping that alters previous views and unrealistic expectations to the realities of the call. Your mentor is to, in essence, oh, Minister Vanessa, oh, hello. Your your mentor, in essence, is to burst your fantasy bubble. Boop. Ah, I remember the early years with Dr. Price, bless the Lord. She said, I'll know when you matured because, what does she say? The stars will fall out of your eyes. She said, you all are walking around with the starry eyes, just in life, the rose colored glasses on, the fantasies of what leadership is all about based on your favorite television show. Hey, I'm going to lead like Olivia Pope in Scandal, which is Scandal. That's scary all by itself. I'm going to be this, I'm going to be. And so you model yourself after a character on a show or in a movie and not the realities of the position. So going back to your question, Chosen Pure Heart, about the clashing of mentor and mentees, that's going to be a real primary place of clashing between the mentees' fantasy about what it takes to do the job versus the mentor's reality of what it takes to do the job. Whenever you study these different mentor-mentee relationships, and you hang out with, even just observe, they're going to tell you the truth behind it. For example, I watch, it depends on the season really, but a lot of interviews from actors and stars and directors and producers of various shows and movies who are successful. And there's a common theme in all of them. And I was just having this conversation with Dr. Price yesterday. I was telling her, I said, they all say the same thing about being the best. Whenever you are the lead actor, for example, in a film, you're the name that comes up last and biggest. First they do this, unless it's introducing somebody new, but it's starring this person and that person, Academy nominated, Academy Award winner, boom, whoever the lead actor or actress is. Then that person has the responsibility behind the scenes of being the best. Now, it doesn't mean that they are, because a lot of people mess over their leadership positions in any industry. But the ones who are noted and destined for greatness, everybody says the same thing about them. One, the number one thing people say, they're on time. Talk about Tom Cruise, talk about Henry Cavill, talk about Angela Bassett, talk about all these people. You know what they're going to say? They're on time and they know their lines. They put in hours after everybody goes home. You should study just the top people in their field, especially ones like that, because it's easy to find interviews. So I'm not saying they're the only ones. I'm not saying preachers and ministers aren't like that, but honestly, we don't walk the red carpet. We don't have people interview us. So I can't go on YouTube for the most part and just, Google this, that, and have a litany of interviews of certain people. Now, some you can, but it's harder to find in the church just because the arena is different. And so I don't want to imply that the world universally has a higher standard, because there's a lot of trash out there in the world, but I have an easier time finding them. I want to say that because a lot of times we can imply that there's just messy and there's nobody really doing it in the church and that's absolutely not the case. I listen to people and watch like CC Winans and people like that. I'm like, man, you are at the top of your game all these years later, still bringing your A game, still hammering it out with excellence. Some of it sounds better now than it did back then, and it was great back then. And so in mentoring and in being that number one, so the actor is the show lead, not the showrunner, because the showrunner is actually the one who runs the show behind the scenes, but they're the lead on the show, and they set the tone, they set the atmosphere, and they drive the expectations. If that lead actor happens to be a producer, then doubly so. It's double the work. And what they do is they get in there with their people. For example, I watched a lot of Tom Cruise interviews, and one of the number one things is, but the man's level of excellence is unprecedented. I mean, he does not stand mediocrity at all. And he will lovingly encourage the cast. the crew, he'll whatever, but he does it first. For example, there was a stunt that they did jumping out of a plane at some ridiculous height, 35,000 feet. I mean, just insanely high. But they had one shot a day to get it right because it had to go with the setting of the sun. And there was literally a 3-minute window to get this shot. Now, every time you try it, it costs money. So what he did was they had the stunt man, because you don't think about this. The stunt man's falling out of the plane with the camera on his head, and he's doing all this kind of crazy stuff to stay in focus. Tom is jumping out of the plane, going like 150 miles an hour. I don't know. And he has to come to the camera and stop within 3 feet of this camera for the shot. It's one of the coolest shots in the whole film. But anyway, and he has to do that. See, I love film. I hope you all love film. We're going with me on this journey. It all makes sense. And so what they did was they dropped down to practice, because you have to practice something like that. And so they practice at like 18,000 feet. 18,000 feet is as low as you can go, to where you still have a lot of drop time before you have to open your chute, kind of thing. And you know how many times they practiced that at a lower altitude before they took it up? 110, 109, 120 times. Literally over 100 times they jumped out of this plane at a lower altitude and practiced the shot. Had to get it, had to get it, had to get it, which means you have to practice, jump out, try it, land, pack it up, get back in the air, and go back up and do it again. However many times, however many weeks it took to make that happen. So they do all of that to get up to do this shot, and it still takes them 5 weeks to get it right. 5 weeks, because they can only jump once in a day. And so it's still, after over 100 times of practice, it still took something like, I think they did it 5 days, so maybe 30 days, 30 attempts at the altitude to get it right before they decided, okay, this is good. See, are you that level of excellent in whatever you do? Are you that level of great to where you will literally do it over 100 times at a lower level and then take it up to when it counts and still do it until it's right? Because they had to get it right. I mean, they had to get it right. But he was with people who were excellent. He is excellent. The director was excellent. This is what we're talking about when we say mentor mentee. If you don't want to, first of all, if you're not the best at your game, don't mentor people. And if you don't want to be the best, don't come under somebody who is the best. Tom Cruise, he said, I work with people that I respect, actors that I respect, who have a work ethic, in essence, who are in the business. When he talks about other actors who he has chosen to work with him, there's a continuity of statements. They're professional, they're reliable, they're brilliant, they're charismatic, they carry a clout or a power with them when they're on screen. All of those things, those people had before one of the greatest people in the business picked up the phone to call them. And a lot of us, we in general, people want to be good when it counts, not when it doesn't count. And we want to posture and do all of these things to show off, but not necessarily to become. We worked this out with our praise and worship team in all the years. Dr. Price drilled that thing in us, and now we're doing it with the choir. Every section, you have a sectional once a week. You're going to practice one time as a section outside of our 3-hour rehearsals on Saturday, preparing for Dr. Price's birthday, preparing for Resurrection Sunday. Excellent, as we say, excellence is not an accident. So if you are not excellent, you should not be a mentor. And if you don't want to become excellent in what you're called to do, you should not have a mentor, because you're going to mess the relationship over. Because here's what's going to happen. If you're on the mentee side, that mentor is going to take you at your word that you want to be the best, you want to be like them, you want to have those kind of results, whatever. And then you punish them for doing what it takes to get you ready. If you're called to be a warrior, you know what your training is? Getting beaten. Bless God. That's your training. Because when you're reigning, you're getting beaten. That's it. The training is to prepare you for the world in which you are called to rule. We have so many phrases around here. Rule your sphere is one of them. Rule it. I like to rule my sphere. It's getting bigger by the day, I promise you. And I like to be on top of my game. I like to come in every day knowing I'm in charge, even if I'm in my office just working on my computer most days. Today, a lot of media production things happening behind the scenes. We're going to be in Nashville next week. I got to get a new website up for Dr. Price before then, and everything. And it was my idea. I'm like, some of these things are my idea. I'm like, I did it to myself again. But we have goals, we have visions. Dr. Price said yesterday, Prophet Tala had an idea for near a whole revamp that she wants to do, and she ran it past me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I like that. Let's do this. And so she talked to Dr. Price, and Dr. Price's overall attitude was, I trust you guys. Some of these things you don't even have to run past me anymore. I was like, well, bless his name. She said, you all have proven yourselves. You've shown yourself. We have the institution at heart, the best outcome for the institution in our hearts. And that's years and years and years and years and years of trying and proving in the terrible times. Forget bad times, in the terrible times, making the right decisions when there was zero incentive, when there was no building, when there were few people, when their money was what's money, when we only had prayer and a praise. That's when the trying happens. So don't despise your wilderness. Don't despise correction. Don't avoid it. The avoidance games are so real. Don't avoid those things, because that, in fact, is where you're going to get the meat of your training. That's where you're going to get the meat of your readiness and who God called you to be, is going to be through those times. Because, hey, everybody looks like a rock star in the good times. Everybody. We're in this facility now. Everybody looks good just because the building looks good. You have to actually dig deeper and look harder to see who might not be. I'm not going to say who isn't, because actually our people do their job. Who might not be doing their job? Who might be shirking? Who might be slacking? Because when times are rough and tough, it's easy to see who's dropping the ball, because it all comes crashing down. But in good times, it's actually a little harder to see that. Let's see. That's tough, but yeah, your tough Bible worth noting. Amen, Miss Jackie Lindsay. That is something that's interesting in these jobs. You have to be tough because the job is tough, but you have to be malleable because you still have to be shaped. And that's a very interesting balance. You have to know who to dial it down for, who to turn it up for. Oh, no, now it's time for shields up, and now it's time to relax. And now it's time to be aggressive. And now it's time to, pull back with the mentor, push forward with the opposition. Not an easy thing to juggle at first, but when you do anything for a long time, it gets easier. Here it is, the giving information. If you want to sow, next week I will have an instant replay because I'll be in Nashville with Dr. Price. She'll be at the NRB convention, meeting people, having interviews, getting her name out there in a wider audience, actually meeting some of the people she's been on some of their interviews. And so meeting them face to face, them interviewing her in person. Keep us covered in prayer next week. I'm not sure about in the midnight hour next week either. I'll be back in town, but we have a rehearsal and everything else for Dr. Price's birthday. Dr. Price's birthday party is Saturday, March 12th. The whole world is invited, but we need you to RSVP at drpaulaaprice.com. Go to events on Dr. Price's website, and it's free, but just fill it in. And we need you to RSVP because we have a reception planned, and then we have a concert planned right after it. And we need to know how many mouths we are feeding. It's a reception, so it's light food. Don't come expecting a whole house out dinner. That's not what it's all about. And so if you're coming, and you can note reception only, concert and reception. So we know how to prepare. It takes all of 30 seconds, maybe 60 seconds to do, maybe, if you're on your phone, and you're good to go. But we need to know that you're coming, okay? And if you want to give, that's the giving information. And let's see. Discipline. Oh, here's some follow-up notes. Be on time, in time. Know your lines, know your part. No mediocrity. Practice. Be great. Professionalism. Excellence is not an accident. Don't despise your wilderness. I think that sums it up quite nicely. And if you are interested in me being your mentor, hey, why not do a plug for myself, right? If you are interested in me being your mentor or coach or advisor, you can email me at Ashley at ppmglobalresources.com. Thought I put this up here last week. Oh, here's Prophetic Ed. You can go to Prophetic Ed as well. You can go to prophetic-ed.com, or you can email me. Please don't message me on Facebook, but come through the professional front door of how we do things, propheticed.com, and pick the discovery call. When you choose, let's get started, pick the discovery call. It's free call, and we can talk through what is going to work best for you and how to get you started, because mentorship should not be trifled over. Sometimes you have one shot to get a really good mentor and you can blow it and not even realize it because you are too new or too young for a great mentor. Do not harass God about giving you some 4-star, 5-star general in the kingdom when you are 1-star at best in your reliability and maturity. Be honest with yourself, because they're going to crush you. They're going to crush you, and then you're going to vilify them, but they're a heavy weight. Heavy weights are heavy. It's like a paperweight, getting mad at the paperweight for crushing your paper. Well, that's what it's supposed to do, actually, is to sit on top of it. Don't pursue celebrity mentorships. Like, don't chase somebody down because they're somebody and then despise the person that God has for you, who might be a nobody that you want to respect. Having that, chasing that whole thing down, very unprofessional, the wrong motives altogether. You want to make sure that your attitude is right, that your act is right, and that you are ready for who God has for you. And as a mentor, you have to know you're ready to pour into somebody else, because you don't want to get somebody on the hook and then have no time for them. Well, I just haven't had time. And when was the last time you talked to me? Oh, I don't know. They're just really busy. No, 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 no. You have got to carve into your life the mentorship obligation and covenant, because it's a covenant for me, for the long haul. And for a lot of people that I know, they're under their coverings up until. It's not about age. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about how many followers you have. Because quite honestly, all smart people have some type of a covering and accountability system. So one last time here, discipline is to be on time and in time, know your lines, know your part, no mediocrity, practice, be great, professionalism. Excellence is not an accident. We say that around here. And don't despise your wilderness. Chosen pure heart. I appreciate your recap notes today. Don't despise it. That's where, man, that's when you find out what you are made of. When you have to make things happen with nothing. Because how about this? You can be under somebody great, but you still have to earn your stripes. You still have to pay your price. You still have to earn your clout. There are stripes on this back, bless the Lord, that are all my own. Okay, Dr. Price has hers, and I have taken many because she has taken many, and my position is right up under her, and that's going to happen. If you are not able to take the blows of your mentor, then you are not ready to be their mentee. If you are not ready to take a hit, you're not ready to be great. I don't care what your career is. If it's in finance, if it's in business, if it's in teaching, anything can push back on you. And if you are not ready to take a hit, then just sit back. I'm good over here. I'm just going to not pursue this, and not the hits that you choose. If you are not ready to live life on somebody else's terms, you're not ready to be a mentee, because being a mentee is, I surrender all. Okay. I'm not going to be in control of my life. I'm not going to be in control of any of those things. So until next time, God bless you all. And thanks for tuning in to Apostle of the Future. Until next week, have a great week and review this.